welcome to The Well Online. My name is Chris, I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm so glad you're watching today. The Well is a church in Nashua, New Hampshire, whose mission is to help our friends and neighbors know and follow Jesus, create disciples who make disciples, impact our community through service, and start new churches all over New Hampshire. If you're watching for the first time, welcome. You belong with us. Go ahead and like our Facebook page and YouTube channel and subscribe if you've not already to stay in touch. And listen, don't just stay online. I invite you to join us in person every Sunday at 10 a.m. You know, we believe that to grow spiritually, we can't be a passive listener or watcher, so go ahead and click the link to fill out our digital connection card and be sure to take a next step. And you can also download the message notes for today or use our YouVersion notes to follow along with the message, and then share this video right now because you could impact someone's eternity. We invite you now to grab a pen, get comfy, sit back, and enjoy today's message.
Well, good morning. If you are new here, I just want to extend a special welcome to you. If you're here for the very first time, my name is Pastor Scott, and a special welcome to all those who are joining us online as well. Who doesn't need a little shot of the 80s, right? That's why we made that bumper video. You're welcome for that. Anyone else a Back to the Future baby? That's me. Actually, this is not in my notes at all, but tidbit about Back to the Future that's really near and dear to my heart. If you actually look at Back to the Future when he's like in the 80s, ready to go back in time, the date that's on the front in the DeLorean there is my exact birthday, October 26, 1985, missed by about 2 hours. So you're welcome for that. You're like, I don't know why I needed that information today. Well, there you go. Hey, I'm glad you're here because we are continuing through a brand new series called Transitions where we're talking about how to navigate change. And we're going through a lot of change in life. Anyone else? Like, you love the foliage. You're just like a foliage person. When you look outside and those trees are just lit up, nobody else, like nobody loves the foliage. Everyone's like miserable in life right now. Maybe you online, I hope you enjoy the foliage. Everyone here's like, not foliage, is stupid. Look, I get a little unsettled when I see all the leaves changing. I'm an anticipator. So I'm always thinking about the next thing. And you know what leaves changing reminds me of? Winter's coming. Winter's coming. I'm like greeting people outside in the front, and it's chilly out there. And some of you are like, wow, this is so negative today. It is kind of, because like winter's coming, and when winter's coming, it's like life just comes to a freezing halt. That's just life, all right? Like everything's bright and beautiful out there with all the change in the colors until it's not, and the trees are empty, and the bone cold chill that you get just never leaves. So anyway, that's winter. Look, enjoy your autumn while you have it, okay? All right, so look, the reality though, for a lot of us, we find ourselves in some seasons currently where we're like, man, this is great. Kids are great. My relationships are great. My job is great. My income's great. Like, it's bright colors, yellow, oranges, reds, purples. Like, life is good right now. And maybe that was you rolling in today. You're feeling pretty good about life. But my guess is there's a few of us who came in today, even watching online, where that season of life that you're in right now is not what you wanted. Didn't order it, wasn't anticipating it, didn't ask for it, but you found yourself in the middle of it. Maybe your income's not awesome at the moment. Maybe your job is hanging in the balance. Maybe you don't even like your job. Maybe your health is right on the brink. What do you do when you find yourself in a season that you didn't ask for? Because here's the reality. We're gonna look at this a lot today. You don't get to choose your season, but we do get to choose how we respond to it. You don't get to choose your season, but you do get to choose how you're gonna respond to it. And I think the reality is that we have no control over the seasons of our life. Though some of us wish we were 22 again, when I turned 30, I realized my body wasn't going to be 22 again. Some of you are like, that's nothing. Just wait till you get to 50 and 60, right? The reality is you have no control over the season you're currently in. But you do have a choice on how you're going to respond to it. The question is, do you know your season? I think here's what's at stake on this one. If you don't understand your season right now and what's asked of you in that season, you could easily miss it, because I don't know if you've heard this, but I hear a lot of people that say, it's just a season. We'll get past this. It's just a season. But I think what gets subtly said in that is, I'm just going to wait it out. Whatever I'm currently in right now, I just have to wait it out. Here's the problem. If you're always in it's just a season mode of reality and you're just waiting it out, you're going to find yourself being like, oh, it's just middle school awkwardness. I just got to wait this out. Oh, it's high school drama. I just got to wait this out until I can get past high school. Oh, man, it's just a season of singleness right now. And I know I don't want to be single, but, it's just a season of life right now. Well, I'm in between jobs. I'm not in the job that I really like right now, but this is just a season. It's just a season. I'm in the first year of marriage. Everyone always says the first year of marriage is really rough. Well, it's just a season. I'm going to get past it. Well, we're struggling getting pregnant. We can't have it. It's just a season. We're going to get past that. Well, we're in our first set of kids and early parenthood, man, it's just a struggle. But you know what? It's just a season. I'm going to numb my way through the parenting stage in the teen years because the teen years are just brutal. You think it's tough when they're little, just wait till they get older. But you know what? It's just a season. We're going to hang in there. I'm just going to put my head down and coast to retirement because the job right now is not fulfilling. I'm just going to keep waiting. And you know what? My aches and pains in my body that just don't go away because I'm in my 70s, it's just a season. I'll get past it. Before you know it, man, you've missed your life. Do you know the season you're in? And have you fully engaged where you are right now? That's our question today, and the question really is, how do we fully embrace the season we're in and not just wait to get out of it as if it's just a season to get through, but actually fully embrace where you are right now? Because here's what I want to tell you. When you engage your season right now, and not just wait for change to happen to you, but you allow God to do something inside of you to bring change in you and through you, that's when you're going to experience the abundant life that Jesus has promised all of us, that it's possible. We're going to look at the good and the bad and the ugly today as we look at the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, so if you have your Bible, go ahead and open up to that. There is going to be some good news in this passage, and there's going to be some tough news in this passage. I'm just telling you, buckle up. So King Solomon, when he hit the throne in Israel thousands of years ago, he became one of the wisest men on the planet. He became the wealthiest man on the planet. He had more power and control on the planet. And he decided, you know what? I'm going to test what this life has to give me if I just eliminate God from the equation. If I just say there's a this world reality and that's it, let's test the limits of it. And as he tested it in pleasure and money and fame and status and power and achievement, what he kept coming back to, and this is a theme throughout the whole book of Ecclesiastes, he said, I can't find the satisfaction. He says at the end of every one of those pursuits is a chasing of the wind. I mean, I can't catch it. I can't grip it. I can't find what I'm looking for. And so in the middle of all this, in Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 11, here's what he says about the seasons of life in the middle of the struggle that is humanity. This is what he says. He says, there's a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. There's a time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep, a time to throw away. A time to tear, a time to mend. A time to be silent. Some of us need to take that pill. And a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. And a time for war and a time for peace. And this is what he sums it up. He goes, what do workers get from their toil? I've seen the burden God's laid on the human race. This is hard. This life is hard. And yet, he says, God's made everything beautiful in its time. Everything beautiful in its time. And he set eternity in the hearts of people. Solomon paints a pretty comprehensive view of reality. Life is roses, butterflies, and puppy dogs in one moment, and it's heartache and it's loss and it's pain in the other. This is life. And what he's saying is in all of our seasons of life, we've got to come to grips with the fact that life often doesn't throw us exactly what we want it to. And so his first invitation, when you look at your notes, is to do this. To actually own the season that you're in, you have to accept God's plans and purposes for your life. That God has a purpose and he has a plan for your life in the current season that you're in. He's got a purpose. He's got a design in all of this. And I think if we don't understand this full list here, we're going to create a pretty shallow version of faith. Because, let's be honest about it. We love half this list. One half of this list is amazing, right? When we look at stuff like being born, man, who doesn't want to show up at a birth, right? Except for the moment of birth. Don't show up at that. That's pretty gruesome. Anyway, you want to be in the time talking about healing. Wow, that took my mind to a very dark place. I'm so sorry. You want to be in the place where you're laughing and you're dancing, where you're embracing, where you're keeping and you're mending, right? You want to be a part of that love and you want to be a part of that peace. But if we're not careful, we can try to create this puppy dog and candies and rosies, daisies kind of a faith when God is only a part of half that equation. And when life throws us a curveball and we didn't see it coming, what kind of faith do we have left? Because life is pretty difficult a lot of the time. And I think sometimes we can have a buffet kind of a mentality when it comes to faith, right? You hit the buffet line and what do? Like you pick out the good stuff, right? You got I'm going to pick out this meat. I'm going to get the pudding. I'm going to wait for the bacon at the end and skip the salad at the beginning. Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait for the ice cream at the end and take, all the good stuff and skip the peas. Thank you very much. Anybody else? You think peas are of the devil? It's a terrible vegetable. I don't know why that even exists. But this is what my kids do. They're so brilliant at it, right? When I ask my kids, hey, you got to eat your food. It is like pulling teeth to get some of my kids to eat certain vegetables, right? You put carrots in front of Joy and it's like you're going to be there for a while, all 15 rounds, Ding, game on. Joy, you put broccoli in front of her. Avery, you put peas because she's a brilliant kid. She knows what she's talking about. Peas are absolutely horrific. But you do that and the kids they want their buffet. They want what they want. They don't want all the bad stuff that we know is better for them, right? Except for multivitamins. Anybody your kids, they love multivitamins because they're gummies. Charity's always trying to get me to eat this horse pill, and I'm like, where's the adult gummy? I don't know where that is, but anyway. If we're not careful, we can have a pick and choose buffet kind of a faith that actually doesn't resonate with real reality. Anybody watch The Princess Bride? That's old school. We're going back to the 80s again for a second here. Remember when the Prince Wesley, he says, life is pain, Highness. Anybody who tells you differently is selling something. It's true. The reality is that life is full of births, weddings, parties, and death and pain and loss. There was a moment actually where John F. Kennedy visited Arlington Cemetery, the resting place for many of our nation's heroes. And as he was looking over the grounds, he actually surveyed it all and said, this is beautiful. Recognizing the sacrifice and the love and all that went into the lives of the people who lived and died to make us free. He didn't know that 2 weeks later they'd be burying him in a casket after his assassination. The reality is that we've got all sorts of plans for our life, and yet we don't know how it's going to go. We don't even know how much time we have left in this planet. Psalm 16:9 says, in their hearts human plan their course, but the Lord is the one who establishes the steps, meaning he's the one who has your whole life in his view. Now at this point, you're just thinking, okay, wait. If you're like me, great. God sees all of this, and he's the one who kind of oversees and is sovereign and in control over all this, and he's the one who puts both of these lists together. I'm not so sure I want to follow that kind of a God. I'd rather follow a God who's all about peace and love and happiness and health and wealth and wisdom. I want that, but a God who actually hands me some things that might be really difficult? Is he really worth following? And believe me, I've walked through a lot of pain with people in our church and outside of our church as we've looked at life at a very realistic lens. And it's really hard. And there are plenty of people, maybe some of you in the seats today or watching online, like you're in a place where you're like, I don't know if I can trust God. I don't know if he's actually there because of what I've experienced in this world. If you're there, just know that you're not alone. In fact, the authors of this book, the Bible, went there many times. Where are you? Why did you do this? How come? It's okay to do that. I think in the middle of all this, here's what I want to kind of wrestle with. In the pain of life and the loss of life, if there is no God, like let's just consider the alternative for a second. If God's not sovereign, if he's not control, if he's not here and overseeing everything in your life, then really, why should we hope for anything good? Because if there is no God, then essentially what we do is we exist on a planet that got hurled by chaotic forces, unguided in the world, into the universe that's eventually going to burn up and die. And there's nothing that guides it towards anything good or anything bad, it just is. And so the pain and the loss and the suffering and the abuse and the war and all that kind of stuff, it just is. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. Because if there is no lawmaker, if there's no God overseeing this, telling us what is good and what's wrong, like who's to say your version of good or wrong is any better or worse than mine? In a lot of ways, we're left with a lion eating a zebra when we look at tragedy in this world and being like, well, I can't tell you it's anything better or worse. The alternative of not believing in God when things go painful is that we can't even have a category for pain. It just is. Now, there's people who try to get God off the hook. They're like, yes, God has to exist if we have a category for good or evil. But you know what? Maybe he just didn't see this coming. Maybe he's not powerful to be able to do anything about it. In fact, there was a rabbi at one point who was wrestling with this age-old question: if God is there and he's good and powerful, then why does evil exist? And then his 3-year-old son contracted a very rare illness that just ravaged him and actually took his life. And in the end of this, he came to the conclusion, well, you know what? God's real, but I just don't think he has the power. And he wrote this book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, and essentially wanted to encourage people, you know, God's there, but he has no power or no real influence over your life, and so why don't you go ahead and take it by your own reins and make something out of it. That's supposed to encourage people. Like, you walking away encouraged with that message? The reality is that it's a very painful, difficult season for a lot of us in life. The world is a painful, broken place. But to say that God doesn't exist or that he's not in control over all of this is a horrible alternative. We've got to have hope that no matter what we experience in this world, that there is something out there, someone out there who's guiding all of this and not just wasting any of it. Because every one of us will go through pain. There's a character in the Bible by the name of Job who went through unbelievable tragedy. He had everything. He had wealth and power and status in the community and achievement, and then in a split second, everything was taken away from him. Natural disasters, death in his family, you name it, it was all taken away from him, except for one thing, really, including his health. Everything went down the tubes. He was able to keep his wife, though, and he had an incredible wife, and this is what she said to him at one point. His wife looked at him and said, "You still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." Like, that's pretty awesome. Why don't I curse you and die? Something like that. Like, this isn't going super well right now. Like, he had a pretty horrible moment in his life, and his wife's turning on him and saying, "Why don't we just be miserable?" And this is how Job responded. He said, "You're talking crazy. Shall we accept good from God and also not trouble?" Meaning that if we're actually going to embrace the season that we're in, we have to understand that there's a purpose and a plan beyond what we can understand, and God is over all of it. God is over all of it. Now that's hard because I think inevitably what it does is it brings up the question, well, can we trust him? If he's over all of this, and I wish we had a huge message today to actually be able to unpack this in depth, because it's a huge question, and we have in series past, but can we trust him to oversee all of this and the pain and the loss in our life? Can we actually trust him to navigate these things that we wish would just change, but won't? Here's what I want to offer you in the meantime. If you have those questions, just see me afterwards. I would love to chat with you about that. The reality is that the hope that we have in Jesus Christ is the greatest hope that you could ever have in this world, and here's why I know. Because out of all the worldviews out there and the different pictures of what God is and what he could be, Christianity is the only one that says that God not only understands your pain, but he lived it. Jesus came into this world suffering with you and me, embracing our pain, jumping into the middle of it with us so that we could be redeemed and rescued and brought back into the family of God, and one day experience a reality where there is no more tears, no more pain, no more suffering because of the bridge that he built between us and God. There is no other God who jumped into this world and experienced suffering. And man, when you're going through a hard thing, like you don't want just an answer in it, right? As if you're in the hospital and you just lost a loved one and someone sat down and be like, yeah, you know what, you did because this guy was a jerk and he deserved it. Like that answer doesn't satisfy. What does satisfy is having someone sit right next to you and say, you know what, I'm in this with you. However dark it gets, I'm in it with you. Jesus went to the darkest place for you and me. He literally went to hell and back to rescue us out of our sin and present us pure and spotless before a holy God. That's how much he loves us. And so can we trust him? Yeah, because he loves you that much. He's with you in the pain. And the reality is that in every season that we're in, you have to understand this. What you're going through is not a mistake. God has you in the season that you're in for a reason. Acts 17, 26 through 27, Paul put it this way. He said, from one man he made all nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands, the seasons that they're in. And God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he's not far from any one of us. I mean, when do we tend to look to God? Is it when things are perfect and going well? I heard an author say that pain is often the megaphone that God uses to get a hold of our attention. And when he shouts out in our pain and we listen, there's a fresh opportunity to come to him, the source of all goodness and love, to do something on the inside of us that we cannot do. Ecclesiastes 3:14, just a few verses after we read this, says, God does all of this so that people will fear him, that they'll turn to him and find him. So here's what we do with all of this. When you accept God's plan and your purposes, what do we do with all of that? Well, the next thing here is that we've got to discover, you can write this down, you got to discover the unique opportunity in your season. What is the opportunity in my season? If every season is ordained by God and he's overseeing it and he's working in the middle of it with plans and purposes that I can't fully understand, how do I embrace the unique opportunity of my season? Here's what I want to say. Ecclesiastes 3:11, what we just read here, is that we have to understand that there's beauty in every season. There's something good in no matter what kind of pain you're experiencing, there's something beautiful to be found in what you're currently experiencing. He says he's made everything beautiful in its time. Everything. So here's what I want to do. Like with your connection cards and your message notes, I want you to actually highlight out of all of the lists, I think there's 28 different words here in this. There's a time to be born, time to die, time for this, time for that. I want you to highlight 3 of those words and describe, man, this is the season that I'm in. And some of you want to sugarcoat it. And maybe some of you want to make it more bleak than it actually is. Like, I want you to take a moment as we work through this line by line in this. Like, I want you to take a moment to actually get real with your season in life right now. There is a time to be born and a time to die. God knows your first day and he knows your last. I was with a whole bunch of pastors a couple of days ago down in Atlanta. And there was a pastor who got up on the stage and he started sharing with us that he had major surgery just a few weeks ago to unblock one of his arteries because he found out that they had something like 75 to 80% blockage in one of them. He had the surgery because he wasn't feeling super well, went to the doctor, they called him into surgery, and then afterwards he looked at them and said, how much time would I have had if you guys didn't catch this? They said at most 3 weeks. Like, we don't know how long we got on this planet. God does, though. There is a time to be born and there is a time to die. And in that, there's an opportunity. I remember the very first funeral that I did was probably the worst funeral I did. It's for my grandfather. Loved my grandpa. And, I always loved all the time that I got with him, but to my knowledge, he never embraced a faith in God. I remember having all sorts of faith conversations with him, sitting down, talking about it all, but, he would just resist. And so here I am, celebrating his life and at the same time having no idea where he is. And as I was preparing for this and trying to share it in front of a lot of my relatives who also are not only they don't have a faith in their life, but many of them are very antagonistic towards Christianity and the faith. And I had to ask myself, well, what's the opportunity in this? How do I talk about this? How do I understand this? And there's another moment in the book of Ecclesiastes where Solomon says it's actually better to show up at a funeral than at a party because it gets you to think. Just as my pastor friend the other day that was saying, I might have had 3 weeks left to live. He got up in front of everyone and just said, look, I don't know how much longer I got, but I want to put everything on the table. I want to make every moment count between now and when God's got my last day on the table. And I just said that in front of everybody that I was preaching at this funeral. I said, look, we don't know how long any one of us has. But when we look at the finality of life, the death and life ratio for every single one of us is 1-to-1. We're all going to face it at some point. The big question and the opportunity when we look at death is, how am I living my life now? How am I using what I got left? And is it going to make the most of the life that I've been given, the privilege that I've been given in this life, or am I going to waste it? He's made everything beautiful in its time. He says there's a time to kill and a time to heal. Man, some of you right now, you're in a season where you just came off of something really awful and you just need to heal. And some people are too quick to jump into serving and activity and busyness and distraction when they just need to sit and heal. I know some people who've walked into this church because of some spiritual abuse that they experienced in other places, and they just needed to come in here and just be and just heal. Now you think, well, that's cool, but a time to kill? What do you mean by that? How could that ever have a beauty in its season? Anybody got some bad habits? Those need to die, right? There is a time to kill some stuff in your life. And some of you, you're messing around with it. You're just you know what? I can manage that. I can manage my overeating. I can manage my porn addiction. I can manage the fact that my wife and I aren't seeing eye to eye. I can manage the fact that I got tensions in all my relationships. I can manage the fact that I got bitterness and hate on the inside of me. You know what? I'll just manage that. I'll work through it. No, you can't. Kill it. There's a time to manage some things, and that's not now. If you're in that season, some things have to die. The reality is that our body cells actually get killed and replenished every 7 years. I didn't know that. That's a tidbit I learned this past year. Every one of your cells in your body dies and replenishes every 7 years. Meaning that we've got to go through a constant process of killing some things and replenishing and reviving and healing other things. And the question is, do you know your season? Again, you don't get to choose the season that you're in, but you do get to choose how you will respond to it. Do you know your season? There's also a time to weep and laugh and to mourn and to dance. Some of you, you're in a season where instead of laughing and just kind of turning on The Office every single week, anybody else, that's you when things go dark? That was me and Charity for a long time. We knew things were bad in our life and it's click, The Office, there we go. Instead of just tuning out and distracting yourself constantly, some of you actually need to do the hard work of grieving and mourning. That's hard. Through some of the pain that you've gone through in life, you are so averse to experiencing that tragedy on the inside of it. You'll do anything to numb it and escape it. Maybe for some of you, you just need to go there. You need to plunge into the dark of what you just went through and trust that God's going to carry you on the other side of that. My only encouragement for you, if that's the season that you're in, is don't do it alone. Do it with someone else. In fact, bring other people in the church family along with you in that journey because you can't handle that by yourself. For some of you, though, maybe you've got the personality where you love to just stay in the yuck for way too long. You've been mourning, you've been grieving for a long time, and it's time to actually start living a little bit. and to laugh and to get back to dancing. I had a pastor friend of mine who said that the weight of ministry and life became so heavy for decades that he forgot how to have fun. Anybody, like, you've forgotten how to have fun? You've forgotten that our God is not a God of the dead, but of the living. And that joy is actually going to be the underlying reality of all eternity. Like, some of you maybe need to turn the office back on for a little bit and get outside and play and find a hobby and something to bring back some of the joy because you've been sitting in the dark for too long. Do you know your season? Here's the reality. For some of us, like, your avoidance of the grief and the pain and the mourn and loss, you're avoidant of all of that because you know on the other side of what you just lost, you can't be the same. And you just don't want to change. Can we be honest about that? Like, some of us will be resistance towards joy and dancing and laughing because you just don't want to change. But do you know that though we want change on the outside to happen, God wants to do something changing on the inside of you? And wherever you are in your season, like, he's inviting you to discover the unique opportunity of your season. And if you do, and if you journey with God, if you go to him, he's gonna make you someone different. Like, you're not gonna go back to the way things were before. You can't. That thing happened. It's done, it's over. And yes, we may need to grieve continually throughout life, but don't let it rob you of your joy. God's got something new for you. Here's the crazy thing. We're always gonna be dealt stuff that we didn't want. In 2 Corinthians 12, the Apostle Paul describes a thorn in his flesh, which we have no idea what it actually was. No clue, and there's all sorts of speculation as to what it was, but we know the longing and the ache on the inside of him for it to go away. And he said, 3 times I pleaded with God to remove it. Anyone else in this room, like, you've pleaded? God, take this away from me. But God turned to him and said, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Meaning God says, Paul, I've got something bigger for you. In the middle of the pain that you're experiencing right now, believe it, I've got something more. And I want to resurrect something on the inside of you. I don't want to leave you the same Paul that you were before you had whatever it is that he was wrestling with. I want to make you someone different. I want to give you a different kind of hope. I want to give you a different kind of faith. I want to develop in you a different, longer, more enduring sense of love for other people. And you've got to go through this to trust me and cling to me in order to receive it. Man, I remember when we planted our church and we got this thing off the ground, there was a season in life for me and Charity just prior to that where we had no money and God was asking us to fundraise. And I was like, I don't even know how to do that. That might put our entire family at risk. And I'm telling you, there was a lot of sleepless nights and there was plenty of stuff on the inside of me that's like, I don't want to do this. I'm waiting for my next season. God, I just want to be stable financially. And God said, trust me. Just trust me. Keep moving. And instead of having financial stability, I had a hope that was anchored in God that would not have happened outside of that season developing it in me. I remember when early on in our church's life, about 1.5 years in, when people just walked out because they didn't want to follow the vision that we had set forth before of trying to help other people who were not church people find hope and life inside a church that they'd never been a part of before. They were like, we just kind of want to play Christian church for Christians and keep it nice and safe. And they walked out and there was a tremendous amount of hurt and betrayal and abandonment and all of that. Like, I had never been the bad guy before. I just had all sorts of people that just liked me. I had a whole bunch of people that didn't like me. And in that, I heard God say, I'm enough for you. I'm enough for you. And you know what? This is my church anyway, and I'm going to build it in my time. Trust me. 1 Peter 4:12 through 13 says, dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery ordeal that's come on you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. Jesus is like, I went through this. Don't be surprised if it's happening to you too. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. That in the middle of all the pain, God's doing something that's actually going to amount to a greater glory and worth when you turn to him on the other side of this. And Peter went on in 1 Peter 1 where he says, though now for a little while you may have to suffer grief and all kinds of trials. But he says, these have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, which is of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise and glory and honor when Christ Jesus is revealed. He says there's something better than the circumstances you're going through. And it often doesn't happen unless you go through the fiery ordeal. Hang in there. In the classic book, The Hiding Place, Corrie ten Boom writes about her experience of a World War II concentration camp. She and her family were hiding Jews in Holland back in the World War II era, and they got caught doing it and got sent out to concentration camps. She ended up losing her father, her aged father, in the time. There was a ton of loss. And the conditions inside the camp were about as hellish as you could experience. It was horrific, some of the stuff that they went through. And yet in the middle of all that, she describes her sister Betsy, who brought a level of hope that just goes beyond the present circumstances. Like Betsy would pray for the guards. She'd pray for the people that were in a barracks that should have hosted about 400 women. They had about 2,100 women that were crowded into this place that was lice-infested, straw beds. The conditions were absolutely horrific, and yet Betsy would thank God for the fleas because it kept the guards out so they could tell all these prisoners about Jesus Christ. And in the middle of all these women who were absolutely hopeless found hope in a God who knew that he had a reality for them beyond this life. And when they were selfish and hoarding food and trying to just do whatever they could to escape the horrible conditions, they eventually turned into this family of women who were caring for each other and finding hope and extending hope and grace to each other because Betsy was convinced that there was a God who loved her and was bringing hope even in the middle of the darkest places. And so Corey writes, he says, the blacker the night grew around us, the brighter and truer and more beautiful burned the word of God. God's made everything beautiful in its time. Everything beautiful in its time. If you've got eyes to see it and to turn to the one who can make it beautiful. Malcolm Muggeridge put it this way. He says, everything that has truly enhanced and enlightened me to my existence has been through affliction and not through happiness. And this, of course, is what the cross signifies. And it's the cross more than anything else that has called me inexorably to Christ. This is where we find the promise in Romans 8:28 where it says, and we know that in all things, no matter what you're experiencing, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Maybe you've heard that before and you're just like, you check out because you're like, man, it seems like an empty promise sometimes. My life doesn't feel good all the time. Do you catch who it's for? God works for the good of those who love him. Like if you turn to God because you want God more than anything else, if you look to him because you believe he's the source of all your meaning and your value and your significance, then you can, like Betsy, walk into a concentration camp and still have all of your value, all of your significance, all of your satisfaction completely met in Jesus Christ, and not only be fully satisfied and beaming with joy in the middle of some of those conditions, but offer that to the people around you. That's the unique opportunity that every one of us have, no matter what your season of life is. He works all things for the good of those who love him. There was an anonymous Civil War poem that was written this way. He says, why should I fear tomorrow? The Lord directs my way. Why should I borrow? Anyone good at borrowing trouble? I live but for today. Whenever I'm weary, in God I find my rest. And when my path seems dreary, I know it's for the best. God's with me, and he has the power to redeem anything. Here's what I want to tell you in all of this. 2 last things I want you to write down. Refuse comparison. Embrace your season. Man, you compare your life to others on Facebook or those next door and all that, it's going to rob you of your joy every single time. No matter who you're comparing your life to, your life is not their life, so don't want their life. Want yours. God's got your life, and he's got a season for you. And the last thing I'll say, you can write this down. Be responsible with your season. Be responsible with your season. Those words that you highlighted out of that huge list of Ecclesiastes 3, when you circle those, Ask God, God, how can I be responsible with this season? Maybe this is a season of healing. What's that look like? How do I be responsible with that? Well, man, if you heal, God says healing happens in community. So invite some other people in. Maybe you're in an awesome season right now and things are great. Health is good, money's good, job's good, and all that. Do you know God says to whom much is given, much will be required? Leverage it. Don't waste the good that you're in right now. I got 4 beautiful kids. We just walked into a house and God's constantly saying, what is given to you is not yours. Leverage it for others. Like, I feel like I've walked into a good season in life, but God's saying it's not your season just for you, it's for others. Know your season and leverage it. Be responsible with what God has given you. Pray the prayer in Ephesians 5:15-17. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Make the most of every opportunity. He's made everything beautiful in its time. Do you know the beauty in your season and how to be responsible with it? Let me say this. I think we've been given an opportunity as the Well Church here in Nashua, New Hampshire for a time such as this. I met with a guy the other day who told me that the 3 top issues in New Hampshire, when his whole job is to connect faith-based people to the state leaders in the government up in Concord. And he said consistently across all the leaders, the top 3 issues are the opioid epidemic, the housing crisis, and the foster care and adoption problem. What would it look like for us to own our season as a church in a time and a place like this? To step up and do something about this. I got a pastor friend of mine in South Carolina who's not only a part of the foster care system, he's created a culture in his church where 20% of the kids who go to his church are from the foster system. That's knowing your season. That's walking into that season collectively as a whole church. Man, I want to capture our attention for a second to believe, man, if we all jumped into the game together and not just lived an individual Christian life, just me and Jesus, but if all of us stepped up to the plate together to be the church in Nashua and beyond, our area would look differently. Our state would look differently. I believe that God would leverage resources that you're going to hear in just a second to reach people on the other side of the world differently. God's got a unique season for not just you individually, but for us collectively. And look, in 2 weeks, we're going to have an opportunity for you to find out what it looks like to actually become a family member here at our church. Some of you might have been guests for a little while. Maybe you're a guest today. You showed up for the very first time, and you're just kind of exploring this church and what it's all about. Others of you, man, maybe you've been here for a while, but you haven't gotten involved in a group and you haven't been serving or anything. Like, you're a friend, and friends are always welcome to the table, right? But maybe it's time in this season and what God's doing in your life to actually stop being a guest and a friend and become a real family member here at our church. Because I believe God's taken us somewhere in the days ahead to make a massive difference in this state and in our world. And it's not going to happen if we sit on the sidelines. Man, we got to get in the game. And so 2 weeks from today, we're going to have an environment called Roots that we've been talking about. It's our opportunity to really become a family member, a partner in this mission of God. And we believe that he wants to make a difference in our city as we partner with the local school and the National Rescue Mission with the homelessness in our city, and in our neighborhoods as we create groups of belonging and village and care and prayer and service. And to make a difference as we plant churches that are also being life-giving servants in their city, in their communities, all throughout the state of New Hampshire. More on that in the days to come. And to partner with people even on the other side of the world in India to make a difference among the women, among the kids, and to start other churches there too. I'm telling you, all of us can play a part in this. But maybe it's time for you to stop sitting in your seat and actually become a family member. Become a partner. Let's go. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know when my last day is. But between now and then, I want to make the most of this. And I want to leverage everything that God's given me in this season of my life to see his kingdom come. What if we didn't just numb out and navel gaze in our hurt? What if we accepted God's got a plan for my life in this season, right now? What if I discovered that unique opportunity? There's something in this season that God's got for me. I didn't compare myself to other people, refused to do that, but to own my reality. And then actually took responsibility. Man, I think God's got something, and I think together we can make a difference to change this world for Jesus. I'm telling you, he did that for us. Man, let's go do it back for him. Let's pray. Jesus, as we close out today, I want to create a real moment, God. I think you do, where you want to invite us to own that you've made everything beautiful in its time. Some of us, God, we've been stuck for a little bit, and we're in a dark place. We're grieving. We're hurting. God, show us that there's beauty to be found even in the loss. For some of us here today, God, maybe we've been riding high, but we've been keeping it to ourselves. Show us today that when you had all the riches of eternity, you left the privileges and comforts of heaven so that you can come experience humanity with us and rescue us. Give us the joy, God, that goes beyond circumstantial happiness. Give us the joy of participating in your mission to rescue people and help them find hope in Christ. God, for some of us, it's a season where we've been exploring faith. We've been kicking the tires on it, but we've been keeping you at an arm's length. Maybe it's time for us to go all in with you, Jesus, and say, you know what, I'm done examining it. I'm done looking at the information. God, I know you've been asking me to go all in, to sacrifice everything and say, God, my life is yours. My day is today. I need to give my life to Jesus. Help us all in this moment, God, to say in every season, you've made everything beautiful. Believing, God, that no matter what happens right now, you have an eternity set apart, guaranteed. It's coming, where there will be no more tears, no more pain, no more mourning or crying, because the old order of things has passed. Behold, I'm making everything new. We love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
What a great message. I hope that you will take a moment right now to respond by filling out your digital connection card and taking a next step that's right for you. Well, right now we're going to worship through our giving, and you guys are such a generous church, and we thank you in advance. Your giving allows us to do all the things that we do on Sunday in person, here, online, and for our community, and even all over the world. And so we encourage you to give generously. You can give through our app. You can give through our website at thewellnh.org/give. You can give just by texting $sign in the amount to 84321. So we encourage you to continue to give generously. The more you give, the more we're able to do in the name of Jesus Christ. Now listen, we're glad you joined us today. Have a great week, and we hope to see you next Sunday.